Are recording now. All right, go ahead and take it away. Thanks so much, Vanessa.
Oh, thank you for the lovely introduction and the prayer. Yeah, I work with couples. I manage a private practice here in Lincoln, and I also direct the marriage and family therapy program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And so one might say that I swim in couples all day long, which is a very weird imagery, but I do love this work. And I think some of the most profound wounding that we experience in our life happens within the context of relationship. When we think back to all the times we've been emotionally, psychologically hurt, it's always been in relationship. But that means that the greatest, most profound healing that we ever encounter also happens within the context of our relationship. And so I know that when we are hurting in our marriage and feeling isolated and unheard and unseen, that can be profoundly painful. My hope tonight is that even if you walk away with just one nugget of how do we love each other better through managing conflict. A lot of us run from conflict or might be a little bit conflict avoidant, but conflict, disagreement, not being able to see eye to eye can actually provide a space where you get to know your spouse better and get to see them more wholly. And so we'll talk about exactly how to do that tonight. I think that I cannot see my chat, which would be helpful for me to do. I said that it was pretty humbling because it is. I am been teaching online now and doing therapy online now since March, and I still don't know what I'm doing like 80% of the time. So I thank you in advance for your patience with this. And we'll get cracking here. So how do we manage differences around the holidays in particular?
But I'll pop in if there's questions in the chat, Vanessa.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I might just X out of it then so it doesn't block anybody's view.
Nice.
Appreciate that, Marilyn. But this is also going to be expandable and generalizable. So you'll find a way to fit it into holiday dynamics, but you can also apply it to maybe just general disagreements and conflicts that you have with your partner. And by the way, in healthy marriages, we fight. Don't forget it. So what I hope you walk away with tonight is an understanding of how conflict can actually, again, provide that space for more connection and more intimacy in your relationship, believe it or not. And we tend to think of problems that we have and that we encounter in our marriage as there's a solution. And if we just get to the solution, everything's going to be good. But in actuality, a majority of our conflict that we have in our marriage and that we can see surfacing around some of the things that are happening right now, especially, holidays, that happens every year, but also the political climate, some issues with the pandemic can be rooted in more perpetual, ongoing, lifelong differences. We didn't marry a carbon copy, right, of ourselves. And so learning how to have specific kinds of conversations around those perpetual problems, super meaningful. It's very different than what feels intuitive. So you'll walk away with knowledge of how to do that. Another night, you will walk away with how to recognize what your boundaries are and how to set them with family members. So not tonight though. So when I work with couples and I think about, and I talk about, what is conflict, even in the definition of, in the dictionary, is something to the tune of intense or hostile differences, fighting, right? Animosity. And so of course that feels really negative. We don't want to have that in a relationship. A way we can think about conflict, though, that might add a little bit of light and even add a little bit of understanding of to why we're fighting the way that we are, is this idea of persuasion. We want our partner to understand where we're coming from. We want our partner to have our view even, right? If only you would see that I'm the one who's right right now, right? That persuasion to our side and the amount of time we want to take to get there. And that's really what it is. And so that's going to impact how we approach conflict around the holidays and around any other time as well. So there's this style that some of us have that's known as validating. And that's where we get into disagreements, and we're not afraid to disagree, but that ultimately I'm comfortable with really sitting and hearing your viewpoint. And ultimately I want you to understand my perspective. I want you to see my side of it. But I'm in no rush for it. We can kind of sit in dialogue and maybe we'll come back to it a bit later, right? Then there's volatile. Now that sounds scary, but these are, and not kind of generalizing here, but these are really these kind of fiery couples, the Italian couples who essentially see each other as equal sparring partners. And there's an actual tremendous amount of respect there, because I can go toe to toe with you, and I want you to see my side, and I want you to see it right now. So we're going to go in guns a-blazing. It might even be fire, aim, ready. And, when we address conflict, and the makeup sessions are equally as intense, equally impassioned, right? And so volatile might sound a little scary, but it can actually be a really effective way to manage conflict. Conflict avoiding also tends to get a bad rap, but for these couples, they tend to fall into this pattern of, ultimately we can make light of our differences. We don't really have to go back and address this. And I'm kind of comfortable with you not understanding my perspective. I get it. It's fine. We can agree to disagree here, right? Now, none of these are better than the other. I know validating sounds like the gold standard, and the ability to have emotionally intelligent conflict resolution is great. But what's interesting is that all of them can be really beneficial. And when both partners have the same style, that's when we see that style of conflict. That's when we see a lot of cohesion. The conflict maybe doesn't pack as big of a punch. What's interesting is I want you to imagine what it would be like to have somebody who has this volatile style of conflict. Get what I'm saying and understand it now. Like, come on, here's my side of things. Don't you understand? I'm going to give you these arguments about why I'm right. And they're married to somebody who's conflict avoiding. That happens a lot. I was telling Marilyn, God must have a really funny sense of humor. Like, how can I put these two people together and help them really grow, right? And so that's something to know, right? Next time there's a conflict or a disagreement with your partner, and you find yourself feeling either overwhelmed by their approach or wondering, what the heck, where are you going? And why aren't you engaging with me on this issue? What's happening? It's most likely because you have a different style of conflict and a different level of desire to be able to influence the other person. Okay. And so I get curious, and this is something you can talk about with your partner too, which style you feel like you have, and if you feel like you guys match up, or if there's deviation there and difference. And so definitely, if there's anything in the chat you want to put here or on Facebook Live, feel free to share. No shame here, because you're definitely not alone if there are differences. Ultimately, what I hope people understand is that a fulfilling marriage isn't just about managing conflict well, even though that's what kind of we'll be focusing on tonight. At the root of it, and thinking of it in terms of almost this relationship house, that the pillars of trust and commitment are what really hold the structure up. But the foundation, the foundation is this deep knowledge of one another. I want to know who you are. I want to know what your life goals are, what your dreams are. And we know each other's worlds. We feel seen, and we do see our partner, which allows us to have a culture of fondness and admiration and appreciation. I mean, imagine getting into a fight with somebody who at the end of the day, deeply respects you, respects your character, admires who you are, and expresses that appreciation regularly. It's like putting deposits in an emotional bank account that's so full and fat that when the inevitable conflict happens, or the moment happens where there's the fight or the blow up, right? You take a little deposit out, or you take a withdrawal out, and it doesn't pack as big of a punch. And so that's something I invite you to consider and maybe reflect on with your partner, that if you feel that any of these foundational pieces, essentially looking at each other through this positive lens, this sense of you're a good person and I deeply respect you, and sometimes we just disagree on things, if that is crumbling, or if there's weakness in that foundation, while it would go outside the scope of tonight, I invite you to consider what it would be like to intentionally work to rebuild that. And that at the end of the day, without that foundation, managing conflict to any degree, right, becomes exceptionally painful and challenging. Imagine taking a withdrawal from an empty bank account. You're already in the red, right? So in managing conflict, I want you to think about two different kinds of problems. We do actually have solvable problems. And this is the one that we tend to think these are all of our problems, right? If we just get to that solution, we're going to be fine. Solvable problems tend to be related to a specific situation or dilemma, as opposed to something broader that keeps coming up again and again and again. So an example might be in this case, right? How are we going to mitigate risk during COVID? This is a very novel problem, right? We haven't tended to think too grandly about this. And how is that going to impact travel over the holidays? But know that these problems are related to this kind of specific thing we're talking about. It doesn't really bleed off outside of that. And there, you can have lots of solvable problems in a relationship, but when we're arguing about the content of what it is. Where do we visit for the holidays? Being on time versus being late to places and how much that bothers a particular person, right? You drive too fast, you drive too slow, you take too long to get ready. Why don't you relax? This is something that when we're arguing, we're keeping it about behaviors or we're keeping it about the content, right? If it shifts down into now we're starting to actually talk about who you are as a person and why are you so lazy and why are you the way that we are, those are flags that it's actually moved on to something that resembles more of a perpetually based problem, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, the hope here is that learning some effective communication skills, learning how to identify, oh, this is a situational problem or dilemma, that we can approach it as such. And we'll go through some really specific ways to do that here in a second. What it boils down to is that in solvable problems, we feel like there's a task at hand and we just have different ideas about how important it is. How important is it to be on time to things? How important is it to mitigate safety versus how important might it be to nourish emotional connection if we feel like there's a dichotomy there? How important is it to stay with your family versus my family, right? And we're really keeping it to these content-based issues and how they should be executed, how we're going to accomplish this. So we really have to put our heads together in this realm. So for whatever reason, when man leaves his parents and bonds with a wife, since biblical times, we have had issues with in-laws. We can, right? Not everybody does, but it tends to be in relationships one of the most common solvable problems. It doesn't mean that it can't also be a perpetual problem, but know that for a lot of couples, it essentially boils down to how do we stand together as a united front? And so there is this sense of, I've come from this family and I have this bond with my parents. I appreciate my parents. I feel a sense of loyalty to my parents, even when they're not perfect parents. I don't know any perfect parents, right? So we still feel this loyalty to them. And we see that our spouse struggles maybe to get along with them, or we see that our parents have different viewpoints or perspectives than our spouse does. And I don't know if anybody's ever felt like they've been kind of pigeonholed in between their spouse and their parents. That's something you can share in the chat if you feel so inclined, or also, talk about with your partner if this is an area where you feel that this comes up for you guys. And really here, especially around the holidays, normally I talk about all the solvable problems. This is one that tends to come up most during the holiday season. How do we visit? Who's going to prepare the food? I want to come and help, but your mom doesn't want me in the kitchen, or she expects things from me that I'm really not comfortable with, right? And if there's the sense of conflict between you and your spouse over it, it really comes down to being able to establish a sense of togetherness, right? We are a unit. We have a shared identity in our marriage, and your parents really need to know that. As a rule of thumb, right? And again, if this is a solvable problem, we can kind of come down to it and say, yeah, I see and understand that, my mom can make the holidays kind of uncomfortable because, there's a lot of expectations around how you're going to act when you're in the house, or there's a lot of expectations or comments made about your work, or then this is the spouse's work or non-work or things like that. And so being able to establish a sense of I am on my partner's side here, if we have to pick sides, and hopefully you don't, but that absolutely can happen sometimes. For some parents, when their children leave the house or they get married, it's a deep transition for them. And so that sense of, being able to release their child into adulthood, no matter how old we get. So being able to side with each other, and know that doesn't mean you have to. I'm never advocating for cutoff from your parents. I'm never advocating for standing against them in a way that diminishes or dishonors them. I'm thinking about a couple in particular where the in-laws were visiting, and The wife worked. She had a full-time job, and much to the dismay of her mother-in-law, she could tell that she was really looked down upon. Her mother-in-law would make comments about, I bet, I'll use a fake name here, I bet Dave is starving, because you guys you're always out at work and things like that, like little snide comments that really wounded, I'll call her Katie and Dave, I can remember that. And really made her upset and anxious every time mom-in-law would come around. And so one night, though, they were coming to visit, and Katie said, okay, I really want to make peace with your mom. I am going to make reservations at my favorite restaurant here in town. And, let's really take him out. Let's treat him well. And when parents got there, in-laws got there, mom decided to prepare a dinner while they were out at work, while Katie and Dave were out at work, and prepared this grand feast, right? And Katie came home, Dave came home, and they're looking at this spread that mom had made. Katie had made reservations out on the town, and mom-in-law knew about it. And it was this moment of make or break right then and there for Dave, right? He's looking at his mom, who he loves very much, who's essentially kind of insulted his wife, with this spread that she's made. And now he's looking at his wife, who he loves very much, who's kind of making eye contact with him and like, what is the choice going to be right here? And, it was really hard for Dave, who loves his mom very much, wants to honor her, but he ended up in that moment, I think it was a God thing, God-based decision, and put his arm around his mom and said, Mom, this meal looks so amazing and I cannot wait to eat it. Luckily, I know it'll freeze well. What we're going to do is pack it up tonight. We'll have it tomorrow night. Katie made plans to take you out to her favorite restaurant, and I know we're going to have a really good time. We're excited to take you out on the town and show you a good night at our favorite place, right? It became a we factor. And mom, often when we set boundaries, it is not uncommon for people to have some pretty adverse reactions to it. So Dave's mom started crying, right? Guess what? Dave's dad got to go and help mom through that, right? That was Dave's dad's job. And Dave in that moment chose his wife, right? And he did it while still respecting his mom. He wasn't like, I can't believe you did this. What's wrong with you? That's not necessary, right? So I hope that if your spouse's parents don't treat you the best, or there's animosity there, that you would never expect your spouse to disregard them in that way. But that you can encourage and know that it is important to take your partner's side with that. If the choice to make a side ever happens, take a side ever happens. Okay. So that's one example. Risk management can be another one. I don't know if couples particularly are navigating that right now. When you see eye to eye with your spouse on this, it's super, right? We're just making decisions together, but then it wouldn't be a solvable problem, right? If it's a solvable problem, it really comes down to the task comes down to being able to honor and recognize that there are different aspects of health and things that we are caring for as people and as a community. And so for you guys as a couple, there might be different priorities about, physical risk management versus the impact of disconnection and the impact that has on emotional health or psychological health. And so, I want to see the chat there. Oh, 3 cheers for Dave. Yes, Dave made the right decision there. Definitely. So how you can approach these conversations if you find that you and your spouse are not seeing eye to eye on which risks you want to honor is first recognizing that neither one of you are callous, neither one of you are like living in fear or anything like that, that you just have different priorities around which risks you want to manage and which forms of health seem to be at the top of your priority list. That's just different. Right. And again, you have that culture of respect and admiration. That's where we're rooting this conversation from. So you frame a specific question, right? Are we going to go visit the grandparents or are we not? Right? Are we going to gather with siblings and their kids or are we not? Right? And mitigating that risk, maybe the different risks, looking into the physical risks of, are there any vulnerable members of our family who could really get wounded by COVID? Are there family members who are out licking poles and not, throwing care to the wind and hugging people on the street, might up the risk factor for contraction. And so being able to decide like, okay, well, how do we want to have this conversation? Are these risks we're willing to take? Are there certain family members who, honoring the emotional health, we miss terribly, and the isolation is really starting to get to us? And so being able to evaluate those risks, have honest conversations about which ones we're going to honor and which ones we're going to put to the side for a bit, being able to evaluate the benefits. If we choose ultimately not to go visit parents or visit siblings and family members or friends, how can we create a ritual of celebration with our family, our immediate family? And what might this be like for the kids? And what benefits could come from this potentially new tradition, right? That we start for Thanksgiving or Christmas, just the small kind of intimate family, or the benefits of being able to get out and see people and speak in communion with other people and see people maybe you've been missing for several months, right? There's no wrong decision. It really comes down to honoring your partner's priorities and then being able to make a decision. And we can do this when it's solvable. Okay. And so here are some other pro tips. And again, if it would be helpful, Marilyn, to have this PowerPoint available for anyone who might want it, or it's there on the live feed or recorded. You have this there. So emotionally intelligent conflict resolution is a sense of self-awareness. I can tell and I notice when I'm getting escalated or my physiology, right? I'm shutting down or I'm getting really agitated. I can notice what's happening and I can manage it well, right? I know how to monitor what's happening within me, what's maybe being activated, and I know how to take a break. Like in that moment, right? If we're talking about the risk mitigation or I'm talking about your mom-in-law and I'm getting too activated to actually like use this part of my brain, I can say, hey, I really need to take a break right now. I'm feeling emotionally flooded. Let's make sure we come back to this in 20 minutes when I feel a little bit more grounded. Now, if you're actually really flooded in the moment, that's pretty hard to say because again, this part of your brain's turning off. What I'll recommend to couples sometimes is if things are getting really heated and you feel yourself getting flooded and now you're starting to say things that you don't actually think or believe, whoever does that, that it's perfectly appropriate to have a code word. And this can be kind of fun. You and your spouse could even come up with a code word tonight if you wanted, when you're not in the heat of impassioned conflict, that essentially means all that. I'm flooded. I'm going to say things I don't mean. I need to take a tight 20. And then I promise we'll come back and talk about this in a more loving way. Maybe it's pineapple. Maybe it's monkey. Maybe it's banana. I don't know. Couples pick fruit a lot for whatever reason. But a code word that you and your spouse can use that means just that. You got to honor it, especially if you're a pursuer or you're a volatile conflict style and you just want to get that problem solved right now and get it fixed. You got to give your spouse time to de-escalate and process for the partners who tend to be a little bit more withdrawing, right? So again, honoring that in a partner, taking a break before you come back to resolve it. Because what's happening is we're typically asking our partner to change, right? I would like you to change, but I don't think that I should change here. When we really think about it, that's at the root of a lot of conflict, right? And so this sense of being able to approach it softly with this kind of recognition that there's no such thing as immaculate perception. I say that to my couples all the time, right? You have different perceptions and both are equally valid. So take the time to recognize that you might be wrong in certain areas, or your partner might have a perspective that's very valid, right? That makes sense, that comes from a person who is ultimately very good, right? And has wisdom. And so being able to launch into it softly, because problems end the same way they start. So if we launch in, I can't believe you're so lazy. You said you'd pack for the trip and you didn't. I can't believe you. Kind of this air of like, what's wrong with you? That's not going to go well, right? And we know that up here. But being able to stick to the behavior. Hey, you said that you would pack, and that really meant a lot to me. This was very helpful for me and relieved a lot of stress. Now, when I come home and see that the bags are not packed, right? We're sticking to behavior. It's not a criticism, it's a complaint. You can complain in healthy marriages. Not evaluating or judging you or your character, just saying when I see the suitcases unpacked, I notice that I get really anxious. And then I start getting worried that we're not going to leave on time. And that's really important to me. And then I feel overwhelmed, right? You are noting the behavior of your partner, right? Specific behavior, and taking ownership over your emotional response to it. Okay. And that's a crafted I statement. When I see the unpacked luggage, when I hear you say, I'll get to it later, we're being really specific with the behavior and our perception of it, and then our emotional response. I feel overwhelmed, right? Very different than, ugh, I can't believe you didn't pack the bags. It's fine. It's fine. I'll just do it all myself like I always do. Why are you the way that you are? Not that anybody here has ever said anything like that. But yeah, being able to really take ownership over your own experience with it reduces defensiveness. Because I don't know about you, but anytime I get the sense that somebody is or actually is saying, why are you the way that you are? Or there's something wrong with your character, right? You are so lazy or you're so selfish. I don't know about you, but I get super defensive. And so, right, things that we can say and do to reduce that defensiveness, keep it to the context, describing what's happening, being clear and polite. It's often so easy to be polite to strangers. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but in a fight with your partner or tensions are high and we're kind of digging at each other, the phone rings and you can pick it up, be like, oh, hey, how's it going? How are you? Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll call you back in a little bit. And suddenly we're like totally capable of being calm and polite and grounded. So we can do it. Sometimes we lose sight of how that creates such a profound culture of respect and appreciation when we habitually and intentionally do it with our partner. This does take intention, and like anything else that is worth doing or valuable takes work. And being able to focus on what they've done right in the past. I remember last time you packed those bags and just it took such a load off me. I appreciate it so much when, we work together on preparing to leave for the trip, right? So those are some tactics. That sounds kind of manipulative. Those are some strategies, some helpful ways of resolving conflict. And this thing about repair attempts in healthy marriages, we make and receive repair attempts well. And a repair attempt is anything that de-escalates tension as it's building, or when you come back to genuinely apologize. Hey, you know what? You're right. I said I'd pack the bags and I didn't. That I can understand how overwhelmed that makes you feel. I promise next time that I will remember that and I will set an alarm so that I don't forget to do it. Something to that tune, right? Honoring your partner's apology languages. Side note, like love languages, there are actually apology languages that couples have. And when we're speaking different languages, that's where we can feel dishonored sometimes or undervalued because the apology didn't feel maybe sincere or genuine, but you might just be speaking different apology languages. We could do a talk on that too. All kinds of things to talk about. So there are some ideas for when it's solvable, what are ways that we can communicate with each other that honor and respect the partner and keep it to the content, right? Now this is a trickier one. And Marilyn, definitely keep me tabbed on time. Okay, we're almost to the end. Perpetual problems, right? And this is actually the majority of problems that couples encounter in relationships. And here's the thing, for those problem solvers out there, or people who are like, if we just put our heads together, I can fix this. Let me fix this for you. This can be really frustrating because for these problems, there actually isn't a solution necessarily. There is much like a trick knee that you will have forever, right? No matter surgery or not, you kind of learn to manage the tension when it comes up. You learn to manage the pain when it visits. You know how to prevent it from escalating out of control, right? Those are those perpetual problems in a marriage that really are rooted in character differences, right? Both good character, but philosophy differences, personality differences. And they're usually rooted in deep needs. I'll share a story here that, full transparency, my husband and I almost separated over how the toilet paper should go on the roll. Now, were we just fighting about toilet paper, right? How it started was, I'd put it on because I didn't care one way or the other. And my husband would see it and go, you really need to put it on this way so it goes over the top. I'm like, well, okay, I'll try to remember next time. But inevitably I'd forget because it didn't register as important to me. And we ended up fighting, and eventually fighting again and again over this stinking toilet paper. And eventually it got to a point where, if I'm being totally honest, I started putting it on the way he didn't like it, just to be like, I will not be controlled, right? You won't tell me what to do. And that's what we were actually fighting about, right? It seems so much silly when I say we almost got divorced over toilet paper. People go, what is wrong with you? And why are you a marriage counselor? But really, we weren't fighting about toilet paper. These were deep-seated needs that my husband had, feeling heard, growing up the younger child, after the golden child in the family, having kind of a lifetime growing up of feeling like his opinions didn't really matter. And to now feel like that was being activated. Every time I put the toilet paper on wrong, for him, it brought up this issue of, I am unheard. My opinions don't matter. And that's what he was fighting for, right? Like, I want to feel heard, and that my opinions do matter. That's a big deal. And for me, it was this sense of wanting to be valued for who I was and not feeling like I had to conform in order to be able to just exist, right? And there's some deep-seated family of origin stuff there too, that's where that showed up in toilet paper, of all places. And of course that trickled out into other areas of our marriage, right? Because he has a need to feel like his opinions matter, and I have a need to feel like I can be appreciated for who I am without having to conform or change. That's what we were fighting for. And that's something that showed up in toilet paper and other areas. And once we figured out, oh my gosh, that's what matters to us, right? Of course we're going to honor that. I can't just tell him to stop needing to be heard, right? And he can't tell me to just conform and, everything will be fine. We really have to understand those tender spots. Every single one of us walking the planet has tender spots. What are yours? And what are your partners, right? That get activated and that are really big values to you. That's what shows up in perpetual problems. And that's why they come up again and again and again. And it's really important to know that when we are not addressing these issues, when we're not talking about them in meaningful ways, which you'll leave tonight with a meaningful way to talk about that I can send out to Marilyn and all the participants. This isn't just about emotionally intelligent conflict resolution. That's a part of it. It's definitely important to be kind to your partner and respectful as you're dialoguing, but it is not about getting to a solution right away about which way we're going to put the toilet paper or how we're going to vote. I mean, that's one that's absolutely been coming up this year amidst all the other things, right? Our connections to the way we vote, our connections to our political affiliations. We're not just voting for a person or against a person, usually. What we are tending to advocate for or fight for or get in fights about, right, is a sense of, what does community mean to us? What does philanthropy mean to us? What does safety and security mean to us? What does freedom mean, right? What does having autonomy versus, making more collective decisions mean to us, and why, right? That's where these things can get really heated with our partner, and understanding that if these keep coming up again and again, and if you leave the conversation feeling more rejected and more diminished and more entrenched in your own position after each time, we're just not hearing each other, you might be navigating a gridlocked problem, and it might not even be about politics or toilet paper or where to go for the holidays or how to celebrate it, right? For example, this holiday season, it more likely is about some of these things that really represent a deep value system. And so I'll show an example here. Everybody cross your fingers that I figure out how to do this. But I'll leave you tonight with this way of talking about perpetual problems specifically. And I know it sounds hokey, but just go with me here. You become a dream detective for your partner, and instead you pause, again, the desire to get them to see your side and see it now, right? You pause on that for a moment and you come at them with genuine curiosity, this deep desire to know and understand, how were you formed and why is this valuable to you? And what is it that you've experienced in your lifetime that made this something so crucial to you? I mean, my husband sharing with me stories of his upbringing and encounters with his parents and his brother where he felt totally disregarded, and how deeply wounding that was for him. Man, like, I'm trying not to cry thinking about it. But knowing that, and then, you know, completely changed the way we approach these conversations, right? So for him, and there's this examples of the dreams that we can all have, right? This is where conflict is actually helping you become more intimate with your partner, with your spouse. Now I know a part of you that maybe nobody else knows, right? And for my husband, it really became about healing and honor, right? Being honored is huge for him. And because we had, thank God, and I really mean literally, thank God for the foundation that we had to work to rebuild, because it got kind of crumbled with all that fighting about toilet paper and lots of other things, rooted in honor for my husband. And for me, being able to be myself, huge values that, you know, it's almost like saying, well, just give that up, you know, just go to your spouse's holiday or family holiday party, just do that right for them. But if doing so, you know, without feeling known and seen and heard, would really feel like you're compromising this really deep value that you have, or your sense of integrity, right? That is really unfair to ask of your partner, and it ends up creating more divide. Also note the questions, everybody, as you are the dream catcher and your spouse is sharing with you, why does this matter so much to me? And gosh, where does this come from? Most of us don't even, we're just trying to get survive day to day, you know, take care of a multitude of children, a multitude of responsibilities, both work, personal, professional, that we don't actually get to pause a whole lot and think, why does this matter to me? And I bet you if it's a perpetual problem, it links all the way back to childhood. Therapist had to say it, right? Notice how none of the questions start with why. Pro tip, for whatever reason, when we start a question with why, even as sincere as it can be, it can actually kind of, the person who's hearing that question can feel a little defensive in the moment. Like, why does this matter to you, right? And sometimes it's the tone, obviously, like, why does this matter to you? I don't get it. That's gonna elicit some defensiveness. But notice that they all start with what, where, how, you know, is there a story here for you? What do you believe about this particular issue? And, you know, where does the importance on it come from? What do you need from me? You know, is there a deeper purpose tied to this? This actually turns into one of the most meaningful, beautiful conversations I've experienced getting to witness between couples, where they are really discovering each other, maybe for the first time, in deeply vulnerable and intimate ways. And it all happened because there was conflict. Isn't that great? We have the power as married couples to move conflict into a place of deeper intimacy, deeper understanding, deeper knowing. And that's really, you know, one of the biblical words for love is to know you, to know your partner more deeply than anyone else does. And this is a conversation that absolutely has the power to do that. So I'm actually happy for you if you're fighting this holiday season, because look what it can turn into should you choose it. And so I think I went over time, but that's where we'll end tonight. Are there any questions that came up that I missed at all? Yeah.
Looks like no questions in the chat. That was awesome. Super interesting. Also, I feel like it's really fun to like do these in here, like we're just, you know, reminded of some perpetual conflicts that we have going on in our house. It's like, oh yeah.
There it is.
The packing.
Yeah, actually the packing one we can super relate to, because every time we try to leave, there's always tension. So
oh yeah.
That's been a good thing with coronavirus. Then we just don't ever leave, and then we don't have to deal with it. So
yeah, so many solvable problems. Just totally go. I'd love to have a session about apology languages. Yeah,
that's also super interesting. I would love to hear more about that in general. So because I do think that's like, I don't know, like the way that you learn to apologize from your family of origin, and the way that your spouse learns to apologize from their family of origin, and if those are different, it can get real. Yeah.
Well, maybe you grew up in a family where, you know, the apologies were never given.
Right.
So it's almost like a shameful thing to have to apologize, or they were forced so much, like apologize to your brother. No, apologize to your brother. Now, no, say it like you mean it. You didn't mean that. Say it again, right? That we can actually have really disparaging relationship with the vulnerability that it takes to apologize.
Yeah.
Our language is different than our partner. there's going to feel like a mismatch. And so, yeah, it's out there. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. Do you want to go more into it tonight, or should we just have another date night about apology?
Well,
love languages?
I can briefly kind of go into it a little bit. So there are actually 5 apology languages, like there are 5 love languages. They don't correlate exactly or anything like that. But essentially, these apology languages, one is recognizing the emotional state that your action put your partner in. So if you can say, for somebody who has this language of this kind of emotionally intelligent apology language that says, oh, I understand, right? I understand that me not packing the bag stressed you out to the max and made you feel really overwhelmed and worried. I'm so sorry, right? For some people, that's absolutely enough. But for somebody who might have an apology language of, say, forgiveness, unless they hear the words, will you forgive me? Or are able to say, I forgive you for that they will feel like there's just something missing, that there was a sense of sincerity that was missing. It's actually important to note, though, that of the 5, forgiveness is one. So forgiveness, being able to identify the emotions, restoration, like being able to say, this is specifically how I will do this differently in the future. I'll set an alarm next time so I don't forget. I'll put it on the calendar. I'll plan my day better so I can make sure that I fit that in, right? Being able to say, here's how I'm going to do this differently in the future is really important. And being able, I'm kind of forgetting the other 2 off the top of my head. But I do know that when forgiveness is delivered all on its own, it can actually be more damaging to the relationship. So if the partner, even if their love language is forgiveness, for whatever reason, if your partner has wounded you and all that is given in that moment is, oh yeah, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? That for a lot of people, that can actually be more wounding because they feel like there's not a sense of acknowledgement. So if your love language is forgiveness, and it's really important for you to hear your partner say, I forgive you, absolutely honor that. But know that also being able to tune into how it made them feel, what you do differently in the future, right? Taking ownership, that's the other one, taking ownership over your actions and saying, I didn't plan my day well enough here, and it totally made it so that I did not prioritize packing the bags. That was on me. I am sorry. Will you forgive me? Right? That a really meaningful apology can often take more than one language, but it's really knowing what's meaningful to your partner and being able to honor that, even if it's not your language.
Yeah, just like love languages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
Good times, apology and forgiveness.
Good times. I mean, good times, also necessary times, because
yeah.
I mean, not that we've ever had any marital conflict ever, but some people have.
Actually, that's the scariest thing to me, is when couples aren't ever fighting.
Yeah.
Go,
you're like, are you communicating then? Like, how do you?
Right. Somebody's emotionally disengaged.
Yeah.
Or both of you are, if nobody's ever fighting. So.
Yeah. Well, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A here. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead. We will not have date night in December because December is busy enough as it is. And then we will resume date night in January. We were hoping to maybe be able to do in-person date nights at some point. I don't think that's probably going to start in January, but a miracle might. Maybe we'll have a Christmas miracle. Who knows?
It could happen. Why not?
It's been hard to plan 2020 in general, so maybe 2021 will be a little bit more manageable. We'll see.
I've given up on expectation.
Good choice. We are doing an event at the beginning of December 3rd. Sandy Danek, who's the founder and works with the Healing Hearts Grief Ministry, is going to be giving a presentation on grief in the holidays. So that will be both in person and virtually. If you want more information on that, you can check out the Facebook page. There's an event there and a Reg Fox sign up just so we can see who's coming virtually or in person. But that's really the only event we have planned coming up. So after that, after the new year, we'll start back up with date night, and maybe we'll have Vanessa back on then or sometime in the future to kind of talk about family boundaries. I think that would be really appropriate, always an appropriate topic.
It doesn't go away after the holidays.
Right, exactly. It doesn't ever actually go away, unfortunately. So yeah. But I think if nobody has any questions, we'll go ahead and let you go, Vanessa. And if you would want to send me that link for the Dreamcatcher thing, I can post it on the Facebook page. And then for people that are watching, which kind of gave you, we don't have discussion questions tonight. So just kind of talking about like maybe your, what was the conflict style, like validating, volatile.
Yeah, I would say right now would be a wonderful time to sit down with each other and turn towards each other and say, like, what style of conflict do you feel like you and I have? Which one do I have? And what the problems that you've noticed in your marriage, like, keep coming up, problems around the holidays, are they perpetual or are they solvable for you guys? And if there are any perpetual problems, being able to have that dreams within conflict conversation. So yeah, are there any perpetual problems in our relationship that we just keep coming back to and haven't yet been able to have that meaningful conversation around yet?
All right, I wrote them in the chat because I don't have a great memory. And my engineering husband likes to see things written in the chat. So
I have a worse memory. So
we're getting old, getting up there. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. This was great and super helpful. And
yeah, thank you.
I thought it was awesome. I feel like our speakers we've had so many great speakers, and I feel like just so much good information and what a wealth of knowledge. So would you also mind if anybody is interested in coming to you for marriage and family counseling? Do you have a practice or a website that you could direct people to if they're interested in getting more help with talking about these things?
Yeah, I actually might send you a link to some therapists who I supervise right now. I do have a private practice, but I'm full all the way through until March. And so for some couples, that's just too long to wait. But I do have supervisees who I trust immensely who specialize in working with couples too, that I'd be happy to pass along that information. The Couple and Family Clinic here in Lincoln, I supervise those pre-licensed therapists and then 2 provisionally licensed therapists, Ashley Montag and Katie Bardsley.
Last month, yeah.
Lots of help and support out there. And if you want to invest in couples counseling, it doesn't mean that your marriage is failing. It just means that you are investing in something that really matters to you. And it's a good return on investment. So
yeah, that's what we're always all about, the marriage maintenance. Like,
yes.
You don't just like wait until your car breaks down to go get it taken care of. So
in fact, you get more out of it if you don't wait until you're in crisis mode or like about to get divorced. That's really hard to move through. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. But anyway, well, Amy, thanks. Glad that you said that. She said it's one of her favorite date night topics. Amy has been a regular on date night. I think she's seen all of them except one, and Carrie and the Todds have also been here a lot, and we're excited to have all of you. So
my biggest is that you get one nugget even that helps you feel more connected and seen in your marriage. So
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Vanessa, delightful to meet you. Thank you so much for your conversation, and we will have you back again to talk about family boundaries. And we'll go ahead and post some resources on the Facebook page, that PDF of the Dreamcatcher things, and then resources if people are interested in exploring counseling a little bit more. So
excellent. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for joining us tonight, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And we will see you in January again. So thanks.
Bye.
See ya.